Before I start the meeting, for the record, I'm just going to remind that this evening we'll be changing agenda item number 4A and 5A. We're going to flip-flop the order. 4A is a bigger case than 5A, so we're going to get 5A done and out of here. With that, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I've now called to order the meeting for Town of Florence Planning and Zoning scheduled for Thursday, September 19th, 2013. Mr. O'Gean, can you take roll, please?
Yes, I will. Chairman Woolley.
Present.
Vice Chair Patrick.
Present.
Commissioner Pett.
Present.
Commissioner Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Reed.
Present.
I have a quorum.
Could you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next agenda item for this evening is going to be case number 5A. This is case number PZC 36-13-Design Review on the Banner Health Clinic Design Review. This is a presentation, approval, or disapproval of a design review application for the proposed signage for Banner Healthcare Clinics located at 3235 North Hunt Highway in Florence, Arizona. Mr. O'Gean, do we have a presentation?
Yes, we do. I'm going to, Mr. Eckhoff, our director, is going to take the lead on that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Yes, a brief presentation on this item. This is pretty straightforward. Banner Health Clinic is going into the Safeway Shopping Center at Anthem at Merrill Ranch. They're going into that suite that's been vacant for quite some time in between the salon and the shutter business, and they are proposing to install one sign on the front of their suite that will read Banner Health Clinic and have their corporate logo on there, and then also they will take one of the existing panels on the monument sign out front. And the signs do meet codes, and they're consistent with the shopping center and the signage plan for the development. And you have a recommendation in front of you for approval of those signs. Be happy to address any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
I have none.
No.
This has gone through Evergreen, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Evergreen was okay with it?
Yes.
Okay, I do have a question for the applicant. Are they here this evening?
Yes.
Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Brandon McMillan, 3643 South 7th Street, Phoenix.
Okay, real quick, easy question. Have you seen the stipulations set forth by town staff?
Yes, I have.
And are you in compliance with those?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any further questions from the commission? If I have no further questions for commission, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve case PZC -36-13 design review for the Banner Health Clinic design review.
I'll second it.
I have a motion on the floor this evening to approve the design review package on case number PZC 36-13-design review. The motion this evening was made by Commissioner Petty, seconded by Commissioner Patrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Your sign's been approved. The next agenda item for this evening will be case number 4A. This is case number PZC 32-13, conditional use permit on the Healing Health 3 Incorporation. This is a presentation, a discussion, and a recommendation for a conditional use permit requested by Rocky Pawa of Healing Health 3 Incorporated to allow the proposed medical marijuana dispensary on a highway business commercial B2 zone property located at 450 West Adamville Road, Florence, Arizona.
Chairman Woolley, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a conditional use permit request, and this item is will require a public hearing. I don't want to necessarily get into the long history of how we got to this point here, but just to summarize, if everyone recalls, in 2010, the voters of Arizona passed the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. Briefly, within that act, they allowed, the state law allowed the cities and towns to develop regulations pertaining to where medical marijuana dispensaries and cultivation sites could be located. So the town of Florence subsequently developed an ordinance to deal with such, and we did state that such facilities, generally located in B2 and light industrial areas, B2 highway commercial areas and light industrial areas, with the conditional use permit was required, and there's some other locational criteria. Subsequent to passing that ordinance, we've been to the commission and the council a few times with applications that have either been withdrawn or ultimately denied by the mayor and council. In response to some of the issues that kept coming up, staff prepared some amendments to the ordinance, which you just saw recently, and there was a public hearing on those changes at the last council meeting, and those changes will be going back to council for action on October 7th, and also this is when this particular case is scheduled to occur. But some of those changes evolved around the definitions, locational criteria, definition of sensitive uses, but also within there was provision to allow for the consideration, and that's a consideration only because it's through a conditional use permit, but to allow an applicant to propose a medical marijuana dispensary within a B2 zone property that was predominantly utilized for hospital or medical office usage. And they have to they would have to locate in that facility and they could not exceed 40% of that facility, and also we would be looking for that use for the hospital or medical use to be retained while the medical marijuana dispensary was in that facility. If those terms were met, then a conditional use permit application could be reviewed by the Planning Commission and Council. So it still is not a principally permitted use. It still has to go through the process in determining the ultimate compatibility. But if they are located in those facilities, there are some inherent variances that are provided to some of the locational criteria, as you recall. So we do have an application here tonight from Mr. Pawa and Healing Healthcare 3, which is somewhat similar to applications that he has presented to you in the past. He is still proposing to operate a medical marijuana dispensary. He is looking to do that now within a small portion of the Florence Community Healthcare Facility, or Adamsville Hospital, Old Florence Hospital. It's generally referred to a few different names. They are looking to reestablish and reopen that facility in the near future, and Mr. Pawa is working with them to potentially locate a dispensary in a very small portion of that facility if they reopen. So you have a conditional use permit in front of you. The application goes into details about how the business would operate, how the space would be created, the security plan, some of the technical operational criteria, and I can let Mr. Pawa probably elaborate on that if there's any questions on that part. But our role primarily here tonight on a conditional use permit is to judge the compatibility and the appropriateness of this use at that particular location. As you recall, when you have a conditionally permitted use, it's a use that might be appropriate at one location that's zone B2 and inappropriate at another location that's zone P2, based on a variety of things. So some of those things that we look at is the specific site, what is the proposed use, and what are the surrounding land uses. I think we're all pretty familiar with the hospital location, and we can see that it has undeveloped property to the south and some residential properties to the south as well. An abandoned or unutilized county juvenile complex to the west, and county facilities to the east, and then the portion of the Sunrise Estates subdivision where the infrastructure was put in, the lots were developed, but only a couple homes were constructed, and those have never been occupied. So the portion of the subdivision that's immediately adjacent to this site does not have any occupied homes on it. So you can see the general location of the site. As we zoom in a little bit more, you can see the additional commercial and residential land uses that are along Central and Adamsville. You can also see further to the west that there is a paper subdivision that was recorded and never developed. Further to the south, you can see the proximity of the Florence High School. Now there is an additional property between the Florence High School and Adamsville Road that is owned by this school district, but appears to be undeveloped and not a portion of the high school at this time, although it may be in some ultimate master plan for the school. So we do look at the site, the surrounding, what the site is owned, but we also look at the surrounding properties and what they're zoned as and how they are developed. We also look at the access to the site, the circulation, and the parking criteria, as this is an existing building that has all been established. We also look at the impact on adjoining and surrounding property if the application is approved. And we have looked at how the property is commercial, how it has been off and on a hospital for many years. The dispensary would locate, if approved, within a very small portion of the facility. They would do a condominium plat to do that. There would be very, very few signs of any of the operation outside of the building. At the time this report was written, we had not received any comments on that, and you now have a couple of letters in front of you. One from the group that represents the Sunrise Estates lots to the north. They are opposed to the request, and then also a letter from the Lizarraga family, and pardon my pronunciation of the name if I got it wrong, but also opposing that request. And you may have additional testimony here presented tonight on the subject case that may weigh into the findings and into your decision. This case does require a public hearing. It has been properly noticed, including with the publication in the newspaper, notification to surrounding property owners, sign on the property, and findings are presented in the report for your consideration and ultimately the consideration of the Mayor and Town Council. The findings are medical marijuana dispensary is a conditionally permitted use in a highway business zoning district subject to complying with applicable locational criteria. Access, circulation, and parking for the subject use conforms to applicable codes. The proposed use is located within an existing hospital building which supports the professional medical nature of the proposed use and enhances compatibility. Approval of the subject use would be conditioned to further enhance compatibility of this use with on-site uses and adjacent and surrounding properties. You do have a recommendation from staff, which again, take note, was provided before there was any comments made on this particular case. But you do have a favorable recommendation that has been presented to you, and that could be carried forward to Mayor and Council should you feel fit, or obviously an unfavorable recommendation can be sent to them as well. There are significant conditions that are added. Some of the concerns that would be addressed is, number one, if Department of Health Services does not grant the applicant approval to operate in this location, conditional use permit will become null and void. Okay, so remember, this is not a straight conventional zoning where once you grant it, it's there forever. It's a conditional use permit, so conditions can be imposed and the use can be removed. Furthermore, if this is approved by the town and the Department of Health Services, and the business does not operate by this, open and begin to operate by this specific date, the use permit will become null and void. So it won't be out there forever. This is also an application that will be contingent upon the hospital being reopened and remaining open. If this use is the only use in the building, whether to start or a year down the road or 2 years down the road, the use is going to become null and void. The condition of the ordinance that was presented to you recently and presented to council is clear that the consideration that's applied here is that the use is being considered in an operating facility. So number 3 is very important. Number 4, also a condominium plat would be prepared to legally define the subject lease or purchase space within the building. I feel like the microphone is going in and out, so I apologize if I'm hearing weird things with it. I apologize if you are. Modifications to the exterior of the building would be subject to a design review application, should this case be approved. Also would be a restriction against monument or exterior wall signage, unless it's any signage that's required to legally address the property or required by statute. Also, this use permit, if it's approved, if it gets to the point where it's approved, it would become null and void if the state were ever to make a determination that there were private or public school facilities within 500 feet of the medical marijuana dispensary defined space. So they are going to plat off a piece of property within the hospital. So that boundary is not necessarily going to be measured by the entire hospital property, but by the legal space that they own within the hospital, or lease within the hospital. The other conditions are fairly standard, but it is noted that if any of the conditions are not met, the use would also become null and void. So there are some very restrictive conditions applied, and I think I've kind of explained those pretty clearly. And I'd be happy to address any questions you have, and I assume more questions will come up as we listen to some of the testimony.
I think I'd like to open the public hearing first, and then we'll open to questions to the commission. Before I open the public hearing this evening, I'd like to remind you that it is the position of this commission to determine if the conditional use permit is proper for the request tonight. We can't get into any of is it the right business, is it any of that. We're just here tonight to decide if the conditional use permit is correct for the area. The other thing I'm going to say tonight too is I'm not going to limit you tonight, but if you become repetitive, we may ask you at that time to step aside and let somebody else. Usually we have to limit you because we have a full house, so we usually limit it to 3 minutes, but we won't do that this evening. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Do I have anybody from the public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Anselmo Tejas. I'm at 3939 San Pedro Northeast in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. As I said, my name is Anselmo Tejas. And if you don't mind, I'll prepare.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Can we fix his mic? We can't hear him up here.
Maybe I should get closer, sir.
Thank you.
That would help. I would like to just very quick prepared 2-page deal.
That's fine.
Okay. Sir, I am the Senior Housing Specialist for the Housing Assistance Council's Southwest Regional Office located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to represent Housing Assistance Council's concerns and interests regarding a request to Florence Planning and Zoning Commission for a conditional use permit to Healing Healthcare 3 Incorporated to operate a medical marijuana dispensary within the city of Florence. The Housing Assistance Council, HAC, is a nonprofit corporation headquartered in Washington, D.C., and has been helping local organizations build affordable housing in rural America since 1971. HAC strives to improve housing conditions for the poor, the rural poor, with an emphasis on the poorest of the poor in the most rural places. HAC assists local organizations to build local organizational and development capacity through direct technical assistance and training, research and information service and publications, and direct loan products to assist in the development of affordable rural housing. As the property owner of Sunrise Estates 2 and adjacent 91 lots north of the facility known as Adamsville Hospital, the Housing Assistance Council is concerned with many issues that would adversely affect property values and lives of future residents that would desire to call the City of Florence and Sunrise Estates 2 their home. We have submitted written response noting our concerns in our letter of September 16, 2013, from Housing Assistance Council Executive Director, Mr. Moises Loza. We would request that our letter be considered our formal comments together with additional comments that I would like to present today. The Housing Assistance Council has reviewed Florence Planning and Zoning Commission staff report and recommendations. No single recommendation or condition is more significant to HAC than the stipulation that the proposed medical marijuana dispensary operate within a secure, operational hospital or primary care facility. The proposed medical marijuana dispensary, if operated as presented in the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report, would significantly mitigate environmental and safety concerns and security concerns that we might have. By mitigating these concerns, there is less risk of adverse effect on HAC's investment in Sunrise Estates 2. However, there are a couple of other concerns we would like to address. The Planning and Zoning Commission report on page 8, the staff recommendation number 3, I will quote it, sir. Approval of this conditional use permit shall be contingent on the primary hospital use for the subject facility being reestablished and the hospital being operational. The medical marijuana dispensary shall not be opened within the facility until the hospital is reopened for business, and the medical marijuana dispensary use shall cease within 90 days of the hospital ceasing operations / closing. The Housing Assistance Council respectfully requests that if conditional use permit is approved, the proposed medical marijuana dispensary should not be allowed to operate independently of the hospital environment set forth in staff recommendation number 3. Therefore, we would ask that the proposed medical marijuana dispensary use should cease simultaneously of the hospital ceasing operation or closing. Rather than medical marijuana dispensary use ceasing within 90 days of the hospital ceasing operation or closing, the hospital should be asked to provide 90 days notice to plan to no longer operate as a primary medical facility or closing. The other point we would like to make is that Sunrise Estates 2 subdivision families should have an opportunity to have a voice in the operation of a medical marijuana dispensary in close proximity to their future homes and families. The Housing Assistance Council respectfully requests any approval a conditional use permit for Healing Healthcare 3 Incorporated be conditioned on a specific term of 24 to 36 months with periodic compliance inspections and a conditional use permit renewal process which would allow for future public comment. This would recognize that future members of your community who would call the City of Florence and Sunrise Estates 2 subdivision their home were considered in your decision today and given an opportunity to have a voice in the continued operation of a medical marijuana dispensary in the future. Healing Healthcare 3 would have an opportunity within that time to demonstrate its compliance with all applicable codes and conditions and prove through a then demonstrated record its ability to operate without adverse impact in a safe medical facility environment. In closing, the Housing Assistance Council is concerned with affordable housing issues, mitigation of risk factors which might affect our investment in Sunrise Estates 2 subdivision, and in the absence of an established buffer requirement governing the placement of proposed medical marijuana dispensaries in light industry or highway business commercial B2 zoning districts in relation or in close proximity to residentially zoned districts. We believe future residents of Sunrise Estates 2 subdivision should be afforded a process or an opportunity to express their future views and concerns in connection with a conditional use permit renewal process. The Housing Assistance Council respectfully requests your consideration of our comments and suggestions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to answer any questions later.
Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rakesh Pava. I live at 13404 South 33rd Court, Phoenix, Arizona, 85044. Good evening, Mr. Chair and the Council and Commission. I have been here before, and I would like to say a few things about my new location. The location that I had picked up before had a lot of compatibility issues from the neighbors, and I conceded to that, and now we have looked at a new location which should be very compatible with the local community. And as far as the security issues are concerned, this is going to be a very highly secured premises where only patients with the authorized card issued by the State Department of Health can access. So not anybody from the street can walk in the building and ask for marijuana or cannabis. Only the people with the card can have access to the building. So it will be very secure environment, and what better place to have this for the patients but in a hospital, adjacent to the hospital complex, which will have a 24-hour security and a different set of eyes, and of course we will have added cameras in and around the building to monitor any unlawful activity. I am playing a very important role in contributing the opening of the hospital in the community, and that's what this community needs, a good hospital. I'll be very much involved in providing the radiology services in the hospital, as well as providing medical marijuana services for the community people who need it. I don't understand why some of people here who are opposed to this medical marijuana are trying to demonize the medical marijuana and also demonize the local community members who are patients and who really need this for the betterment of their health. Just like they have a right to go to a dispensary and get their prescription, so do these people have a right. They have a card which has been issued on a doctor's, physician's recommendation to go and get their medical prescription. Who are we to judge? Who are anybody else to judge whether a patient can take a pill of aspirin or a Tylenol or Vicodin, or he can take a cannabis? We are not here to judge that. Why are we here to demonize the medical marijuana business? Especially when it is in such a secure environment and it is dispensed by medical professionals. I fail to understand why it is. Healing Healthcare 3 is pleased to receive the Town of Florence staff recommendations that the Planning and Zoning Commission sent the town a favorable recommendation for the conditional use permit, subject to the 11 outlined conditions. With all due sincerity, I come here to ask that you trust Healing Healthcare 3 to continue to do what is right for the future patients and the community as a whole, and send a favorable recommendation for this CUP to the Town Council. Healing Healthcare 3 will succeed by offering its patients a safe and secure healthcare environment and close personal attention. Patients will no longer have to depend on caregivers to grow the plants for them to cultivate the plants themselves. You know, this issue has been brought up several times that under the caregiver model, if there is no dispensary within 25 miles radius, I agree, there is a dispensary open in Coolidge, there is a dispensary open in Casa Grande, but the patients will have to go those towns, give them those towns a business and bring the medicine into Florence. They can still cultivate in their backyard. They can still grow 12 plants. And they can dispense those 12 plants to anybody. But if there is a dispensary in the town of Florence, that will stop. The Florence PD will have every right to go and knock on their door and dismantle their crop, because they are no longer authorized to do that. And that is the kind of safe environment that I'm willing to provide to this community, where every patient can get what they desire to get. And I want to be a part of this community by providing radiology services in the hospital and making it a very successful operation for the town of Florence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is John Schuer, and I'm here in two capacities. One as a representative of the Florence Unified School District. Address, 1000 South Main Street. My home address is 324 North King Street in Florence, Arizona. My function at the school district is the Director of Construction and Developer Negotiations. And I want to speak on two sides, one personally and one as the district. Initially as the district, the undeveloped land that is owned by the district that fronts onto Adamsville Road is planned for development, is undeveloped at this point in time. We actually hired a surveyor, or authorized the hiring of a surveyor a couple weeks ago to develop a plan to develop that land into both practice and game fields for our football and soccer programs. Currently, that land is used on an annual basis for activities with our high school kids, whether it be bonfires, whether it be some kind of an exploration issue out there. While the land does appear to be undeveloped, it is used. And we plan to have and it is budgeted for this current school year, to have the earth moved and to be able to flatten the land and make it into a usable practice and playing area. Depending on how the architects or the land use people come back to us, it will either lower the land sufficient that it will become an actual retention basin as well, or depending on the feasibility, it will probably come to the level of the surrounding roadways. For that reason, the school district objects to the placement of the medical dispensary there. We do acknowledge the fact that, and this is me talking personally, we do acknowledge the fact that there are potential uses, that this is not, as the previous speaker indicated, we're not here to demonize anybody. Basically, we're here to indicate that we do have objections to this based upon the current law and the current town ordinance. And we also believe that small towns such as ours, this has a much larger impact than a larger development where it can be put in a place where it's out of the sight of inquisitive minds. And I realize that to a certain extent, as it was described today, the kids won't have access to it and that kind of thing, but they will know. And we've spent the last 15 years trying to develop a no-tolerance attitude and have very successfully lowered our incidence of that because of that attitude. And we're just concerned about sending a message that whether it's either actively or tacitly, we don't want to send a message that it really is okay. With that said, thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Clay Sanger. My address is 625 Adamsville Road. I live in the southernmost residence within the area on the map there that's indicated. Just like to take a few minutes as a homeowner and a long-term resident of Florence to let you know what my concerns are. I believe that there's a potential rise in crime that could occur, to include home invasions, homicides, burglary, vehicle theft, property damage, robbery, and those aren't just things that I picked out of last week's blotter from the paper. Those are things that I looked into. Property values, that's already been brought up, and I don't want to put anybody down, but I'm not a corporate guy. I'm a homeowner, and I'm concerned about my property values. They've only started to recently recover, and I think that this wouldn't help it at all. My wife and I have lived in Florence for 15 years. We've raised our 3 children here who all went to school here. We're also helping our daughter to raise her 2 young daughters in our home, which is adjacent to the property. I spend my earnings locally as much as I can to support local business. I probably wouldn't be supporting that. As per the map with the 300-foot perimeter of the proposed dispensary, it would appear that the Lozadagas, my neighbors to the west, and myself, we make up 100% of the homeowners affected by this proposal. And I believe that we're both 100% opposed to the proposed location of this dispensary. So we respectfully ask the town council or the board here take the community members' wants and welfare into consideration prior to rendering a final vote. And I'm not saying that the dispensary will be impacted by any increase in crime. However, I believe that the residents of Florence will be the targets instead. Please don't put my family, the Lozadagas, or our property at risk by approving this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Jim Nupp, and I'm Public Information Officer for Orlando Voiles, Pinal County Attorney. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and I want to speak to you specifically about drug-free school zones, and that is going to be Arizona Statute 13-3411, and I'm going to read 13-3411A1 and I1. And I'm glad we have this map up with the distances shown. It is unlawful for a person to do any of the following: intentionally be present in a drug-free zone to sell or transfer marijuana, peyote, prescription-only drugs, dangerous drugs, or narcotics. Whether you want to sit here and argue all night about whether prescription drugs are medical marijuana or marijuana is marijuana, which still is, as it is federally recognized, a Schedule I drug with no medical use. And now I'll go on to read 13-3411 I1, which defines drug-free school zone. Means the area within 300 feet of a school or its accompanying grounds, any public property within 1,000 feet of the school or its accompanying grounds, and a school bus stop or any school bus or bus contracted to transport pupils to any school. So I do believe within 300 feet we do have the court, which does exist on public property. We do have I believe you have it as 406 feet away from the actual dispensary itself inside the hospital, but that is not what we count, I don't believe. It is actually from the property boundary, which clearly resides within 300 feet of the boundary of the school parcel. So again, drug-free school zone means the area within 300 feet of a school or its accompanying grounds, any public property within 1,000 feet. I would ask you to take this into consideration as you consider this a conditional use permit tonight, and I'd ask that you vote no on it, or recommend unfavorable. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Danny Lizarraga. I live at 675 West Andersville Road. See the red dotted line? That dotted line goes right over my roof. So that's how close I am, right there in the left-hand corner. And I'm not very happy what's going to happen. I don't want to demonize the person that talked or whoever who left already. Well, I just don't feel that we should have this kind of a dispensary at this new hospital location. For the fact is that we had track students that go through Adamsville Road running, and they run quite a bit through Adamsville Road going back and forth during their seasons practice and so forth. I have seen them. I have lived since 1987. They've been using the Adamsville Road for track purposes. And I feel that this picture here that they show here is not updated. This is old. I mean, if you're going to have a meeting like this, you should have the up-to-date picture. I do not see the solar panels on the new roof that they put on there for the high school parking, for the kids for covered parking. That's a good clue there. This picture is old. And I wish, if we're going to have a meeting like this, let's be updated. I'd like to see more and more input on that behalf. My major concern is that there's going to be problems, and I can just see this is going to happen. And if it does occur, it will probably go out of control. I don't know. It might bring people in that we've never seen before or have any business come by our property. I don't want nobody walking through our property at night or whatever, trying to snoop around. Don't need that. I don't want to worry about it. We have a nice, peaceful area. I'm very happy with my neighbors. And that's all I have to say at this moment, this time. Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? Please state your name and address for the record.
Miguel Olivas, and I'm from Coolidge, Arizona. They say, I've always said that an argument without passion is a statement with reason. And as we started this commission meeting today, talked about the reality of law, the use of land. It's not going to be a discussion about the social issues behind medical marijuana. Sounds like even from both sides, it sounds a little bit more social problems than there is anything. I've listened to the council numerous times, I've listened to the commission several times, and I've heard everything from the Constitution to state law. Reality is I'm not a lawyer, nor have I ever played one on TV. Truth is we listened to County Attorney Voil's representative, Mr. Jim Nutt, and listen to Rocky. I guess the argument really comes down to the state law in terms of the use of medical marijuana and the footage as opposed to what was presented today and where those boundaries are. It is under the guise of what Mr. Pawa believes in terms of Healing Healthcare Inc. 3, that it is not within the boundaries of a school zone, but it is in accordance with Arizona law regarding the medical marijuana facilities and their proximity to educational establishments and things of that nature. So today what I ask you is to understand, and just like you said when this all started, why don't we look at it for what it is? It's a controversial issue, and I've mentioned this at a council meeting last time around. I'm the father of 10 children. This isn't exactly an issue that I find comforting in my own home. Everyone can understand that the schools and the locations around it are vital and very important. And I think that Rocky has made the case here today that if there is something that arises, let's say, for example, gentleman from Hack, Mr. Tejas, we've had discussions. He says, what happens down the road if a school goes up or our community goes up? Well, let's reevaluate it. Mr. Pawa has been very, very clear, not only to the commission, but to the town council, that the community comes first. And in the event down the road something comes about where maybe the impact on the community is negative, well, it's then time to take that action then, and he'll understand. All he's saying is, let's look at it on its merits. Is it legitimate business? It is. Is it lawful? It is. Does a lot of people like it? No. But it is what it is. So in terms of, I guess, as you make your decision tonight, just as a casual observer and gentleman that does public relations for Rocky, I only ask that you take into guidance, and I think members of the town's staff has done a tremendous job in terms of, looking at a lot of the due diligence, although they said a lot of it hasn't been taken care of. It's still going through that. There's 11 exceptions to this. And Rocky in his statements had quoted that, yeah, he's willing to comply to all 11 exceptions. This isn't something he wants to do to force something on a community. But you have to understand, these schools are going to have houses next door to them. These people, these residents will move in. There will be people next door to them growing marijuana. Think of all the medical marijuana permits that exist in this town now, and all those people are allowed to grow medical marijuana in their homes. So we talk about safety, and we talk about raids, we talk about all these different things, we actually have to think of the public side where this might help the community in terms of putting it into one small medical facility in a medical complex where actually Mr. Pawa, through his radiology center, has a significant impact whether that hospital opens or not. Nobody's mentioned that today. I'm mentioning it to you today. So as I said earlier, as I close here, you know, we have to take the passion. I think the commission, in all fairness, the last time you voted on this, looked at it not in a social issue, but purely in the context of the ordinances, the laws, the rules, and regulations that exist. And I believe you'll do that today. And I think along with the town staff and the town council eventually and everyone else, Mr. Pawa and Healing Healthcare 3 Inc. will do everything in their power to make sure that the community is not adversely impacted, that the security of the facility is top-notch, but most importantly, that the care of the patients, the quality is there. And I only ask that you take in those considerations, and I thank you for your time, and may continue to do what's best. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? I think I got one more back there.
My name is Kimberly Hazlitt, and I have a patient support group called Southwest Arizona Patient Alliance. I help patients throughout the whole state of Arizona. I'm also, if we do get permission to open the dispensary, I will be the dispensary manager working for Rocky. I wanted to let people know that when I've been with the Prop 203 since it started, because I had a lot of my family suffer terribly from cancer. Once it started, I started a support group to take care of patients. These patients that these people are talking about are your neighbors. You're not going to have people coming in from Tucson and Phoenix. They have their own dispensaries. These are going to be people in your community, the people that you sit beside in church, the people you go to the grocery store with. They're not criminals. They're patients. They're sick. And to be treated like a criminal simply because you choose a natural medicine is not right. And we don't want to hurt our community. We live in these communities. You know, the fact that crime is not ever been proven that it attracts more crime. The only state that has really done a lot of research on this is Colorado, and they found that dispensaries did not attract crime. The first one was banks that attract crime. The second one was liquor stores. There's a lot of other businesses that attract crime. The AMMA calls for reasonable zoning for all local municipalities. That doesn't mean that you can zone out a dispensary. You have to give these patients access and not make them travel 25 miles when they're ill. Some people can't even get to the grocery store. I see it every day. These are not criminals. These are citizens of your town. And please don't treat them like that. Rocky is a professional. I'm a professional. I know I will run that dispensary with compassion, and I'll follow the law to the letter to the T. So please allow us to have these patients in this town to have access to medicine. It is the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time?
Ruben Montaño, a representative for the town council. Listening to what's going on, and we discussed this in the past, the responsibility of the town council is to rely on the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. But in looking so, you know, Miguel presented a good case in stating that, you know, we have to provide for individuals from the location of the dispensary and with a radius of 25 miles. And as what has not been provided is Coolidge does have a dispensary, and we are within the 25 miles, so we are covered under there. So we being only 10 miles away. The second part, what I'd like to bring up, Mark, can you go to the other screen? When you're looking at a conditional use permit, it's reliant on a lot of information that's been provided to you today. And the red line surrounding the actual location is approximately 300 feet. The blue line is approximately 500 feet. the information that was not brought up today is that those are proposals that are being considered for the town council. Our current ordinance states it must be 660 feet away from a religious location, a library, or a school. And if you extend it down toward the football field, you can see a parking lot that's dirt. It doesn't give you the measurement to say if that's even within the 660 feet. But as explained from our representative from the school, you know, that area is already being used for activities. So what I'm looking at is the presentation that's being done today is not meeting the accordance of our current code or ordinance. At this point, looking for conditional use permit, you'd have to bring up a variance because this isn't our codes for planning and zoning. So I know they presented this in a situation to say, what if? And right now, this isn't the proper map to be using because the perimeter is not set to code. And the code is submitted by the Planning and Zoning Board, to the town council, and that's how it's been approved. So now the town has agreed to present this in a tentative presentation, but it's not the actual current ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more public that would like to speak at this time? With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. The public hearing is now closed, and I will open it up to the commission for questions. Commissioners?
So Ruben, you're saying that the football field is within the 660 feet. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the parking lot, the dirt
Parking
parking
lot,
lot, is almost hitting the 660, but as explained by the school, Mr. Schur, he stated that those areas to the north of the football field are used for different activities. And like explained by Mr. Lizarga, cross-country uses it, they run, you can see all the trails up and down that area, and they use it for bonfires and other activities. So where do we consider the actual activities of the school? Just because their property extends all the way to Adamsville, it's still part of the school. And you're looking at the perimeter of the building to the perimeter or boundary of the school. Where do we consider that ends, or where does it begin?
You're not considering the flow of the kids back and forth to their homes or anything?
No, they use that for activities for the school.
Okay. All right, and then the information officer, were those federal or Arizona statutes that you were quoting? State statutes. Okay. And what's the occupation of, what's the status of the hospital right now? Is it completely vacant, Mark?
Mayor, members of the commission, our building staff has been working with them and the state of Arizona, the hospital relicensing department, to get the facility reopened. It has changed ownership, and they would like to reopen. I do not have a set date for that reopening, though.
Yes, sir.
If I may,
For the minutes, could you please state your name again? Not your address, just your name.
I'm Rakesh Pava, and I just would like to address the question raised by you, sir. There is a state health department inspection scheduled for 25th of September for the hospital.
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
The Pinal County Justice Court, is that considered a correctional facility?
I would not consider it a correctional facility, and I'll note, Chair, members of the commission, that it's pretty obvious that this conditional use permit, there's no way that it would ever be successful if the ordinance that's being presented almost concurrently to the town council on October 7th is not approved. So you have a tentative ordinance, and then you have the CUP. This obviously, yes, I could tell you with 100% certainty, this proposal would never work under the current ordinance. It can be considered under the subject ordinance, but you're not given a final determination tonight. That's the role of the mayor and council, and the order that it will be prepared to the mayor and council is that they would act on the ordinance, If the ordinance on October 7th fails, this automatically fails. If that ordinance passes, then this application can be considered, but it still doesn't mean that it will be approved, but it can be considered. So we are aware of the comment that was made.
Didn't get an answer to my question.
Okay.
My question was, the Pinal County court that you showed on the previous screen, can you bring up the other picture?
The juvenile detention center that's
No.
been the
No,
courthouse?
The Justice Court.
No, we did not consider that a correctional facility, and under the ordinance, that type of use also is not within the, there's a variance provided for the sensitive uses in that ordinance. So that would not be applicable even if it were.
Okay, thank you.
So then, if we were to recommend an approval on this tonight, it would be subject to council passing or not passing that new ordinance. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And the use permit does say it's subject to conformance with any applicable town codes, ordinances, et cetera. There's a couple other conditions that say something similar to that effect. But there's just no way that this can go anywhere if that ordinance doesn't pass. It just doesn't meet the current ordinance.
And the other thing you have to look at, October 7th, it may be on the agenda, or it may be tabled off the agenda. So you're making a decision, you're putting the cart before the horse. You know, and the recommendation is either make a decision based on the current code or lay this on the table until after that decision is made.
I had a couple questions. The first one in condition number 3, where the dispensary use shall cease within 90 days. I just wondered how that 90 days was developed, that time frame.
I believe there was a comment made that sounded pretty good to me, that they would cease concurrently. So I would, if you were inclined to move forward, I would probably tend to agree with that. The 90 days was just an opportunity to, as we saw at the hospital the last time, close fairly suddenly. So if you're in business, that would be kind of a shock, and you'd have to make an adjustment. But I think based on the nature of the use and the concern about this operation existing in that facility without the hospital use, I think concurrently would be perfectly adequate.
And my other question regarding what the public information officer from the county attorney's office was saying, I'm getting a little conflicted information, or at least in my head processing it, between the actual dispensary, like legal description, that it occupies in the hospital versus the property line of the actual hospital itself. And it seems like some people are saying we use the dispensary physical description, and some people are saying we use the hospital description. And I was wondering, I guess it's my obligation to rely on the information presented to me, but when I hear that too, it kind of gives me a little red light, and I just wondered if that argument had been presented to you before and what you had heard about it.
That's a good comment. And the physical, the only locational criteria that comes from the state of Arizona is specifically the physical address of the nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary and the physical address of one additional location, if any, where marijuana will be cultivated, neither of which may be within 500 feet of a public or private school existing before the date of the nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary application. So they talk about the physical address. And this is one big property. That property could be subdivided, it could be put into a condominium plat. They could just have strict ownership of a portion of that facility. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I would question that even whatever the attorneys say here tonight or on October 7th, probably is something that's going to have to be reviewed at the state level, and the Arizona Department of Health Services is going to have to look at the application and look at this information and make it a decision. So at one point, Mr. Pawa did have legal representation. They contacted Arizona Department of Health Services for initial assessment of the site, and they believe that the site would meet the criteria. So, but that is not, they will not validate that. The other challenge also is that we're aware of the drug-free school map requirement and have been unable to locate that map. Contacts to the school district and also searching on the county recorder site, can't locate that map. We figured that at least, which is a statutory requirement, that map be created and recorded, and that would help us understanding what the school really considers to be their campus, not just additional property that they own, but where their actual campus is, and then you can measure from that point the 300-foot or the 1,000-foot. But it is not crystal clear where that campus is. So I think that's issue number 2 that the state is going to have to review. And if they review it in favor of the school, then again, if the dispensary can't meet those requirements, it would become null and void. So.
Before I let you go, Ruben, I need to remind the public that once a public hearing is closed, we can only address the public that we call forward, okay? The only people that can actually speak tonight after the public hearing is the staff and the applicants only, okay? Otherwise, I would have to call you from out in the public, okay? Okay, go ahead, Ruben.
I go along with what Mark says. There isn't enough information, and I think that they may need to look and see where the boundary is for the drug-free school zone. So that may need to be something you need. You may also need an opinion from the legal counsel that follows up on the federal act dealing with No Child Left Behind, because that's where the drug-free school zone is stipulated that the state must provide the distance for all schools. And I think that that's something you need to look at as well. I'm not saying anything to say that we should have a location, not have a location. I'm looking at it from the respects of the ordinances and the way everything is currently being brought together, but it's not in accordance to our current ordinance.
Do I have any further questions? Because I got a whole lot. Sorry. All right, let's see, where do I want to start? I'm going to start with staff first. Staff recommendation number 1, the conditional use permit shall be revoked and become null and void if the applicant is not granted approval by the ADHS to operate a medical marijuana dispensary at this location by December 31st of 2014. My first question is, how long does it take to get approved? If we said yay tonight, how long does it take him to get approved?
Well, this is another interesting scenario because the applicant essentially ran out of time on the previous location, and he has a request into the State Department of Health Services to get an extension because of the scenario that he faced. My understanding of that situation is that they kind of hit like everything related to the medical marijuana law. Everything is new. They kind of hit uncharted territory. So first they have to decide whether they're even going to continue to extend him the license. And then they have to review his application for this site. They have to review the specifics of this site. But we don't know for sure how long it's going to take. But if it doesn't get done within that time frame, that's it.
So, did I know, how long is it? 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to get approved?
The applicant may be able to elaborate on that more than I can, Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Pablo, could you just clarify how long it would take to be approved?
So I just got a written notification from the Department of Health to fill out a formal application for the change of location from the Big O Tire building to the current location. And I don't know how much time it will take for them to approve this location, but my license to operate a dispensary or cultivation site has been approved through August 8th of 2014.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so my next question on number one is, how did we come up with December 31st of 2014?
We came up with the date to allow time for things to get processed, because they are in new territory. There's some unknowns. I suspect there may be legal challenges whenever there's opposition to a case, or whether there's questions such as where you measure the boundary from. There's going to be some legal challenges, so it allows some time for some of those to get worked out. If they don't get worked out by that date, then again, it becomes null and void.
Okay, my next question, because 1 and 2 are kind of the same, is number 3. And Commissioner Petty kind of touched on it a little bit. I have a problem with 90 days. If we were to approve it, or forward a favorable recommendation to the town, 90 days to me leaves fishing time to find somebody else to take over or that type of thing. Coming from the business industry, when something closes down like that, and I'm sorry, but I'll use a local healthcare provider that we currently have in town. When the hospital closed this last time, he was not given 90 days to continue his business. He had overnight had to find another location to operate. He was operating a business within the hospital, just like Mr. Paul would be. They closed down overnight. He had to find a new location overnight. He didn't get afforded an opportunity of 90 days. So my question is, if the hospital is closed, we lose security. We lose all those other things that normally we would have that makes us look like a very pretty picture. But if the hospital shuts down, we now have one tiny little 1,000 square foot office that's going to become a medical dispensary that doesn't have the infrastructure of a hospital that's up and running around it. So my question is, can we change that stipulation to they would cease and desist upon the closure of the hospital?
Should you feel inclined to send a favorable recommendation, yes, I would agree completely. And it would be reworded: approval of the conditional use permit shall be contingent upon the primary hospital use for the subject facility being reestablished and the hospital being operational. No change there. The medical marijuana dispensary shall not be open within the facility until the hospital is reopened for business, and the medical marijuana dispensary use shall immediately cease when the hospital, if and when the hospital ceases operations.
So that is feasible. We could change that stipulation.
Chair, members of the commission, you have a lot of options here tonight.
Okay.
You could send an unfavorable recommendation and don't worry about the conditions and just send an unfavorable recommendation. You could send a favorable recommendation with the conditions as they're presented, or you could send a favorable recommendation with modified conditions, or, as suggested here as well, you could also request that the item be tabled to a non-specific date or continue to a specific date. If there's a continuance, I would probably continue it to a specific date so we don't have to go through the re-advertising and so forth. And then the use permit, when it's on the council agenda on the 7th, we would go ahead and continue that aspect as well, and just see how the ordinance goes. And I would say if there's a direction to do a continuance, that you send clear direction specifically to the applicant, because again, I think it's our job to take as much of the information as we get and process it and come up with a recommendation. But the applicant, we need some assistance in kind of clarifying some of these points from the Department of Health Services and the school district. So we would not be opposed to any of those options that you may consider tonight.
Okay, I got a couple more questions, though. I need some help on my memory here. Conditional use permits, how long are those issued for? Are those indefinite once they get them?
Chair, members of the commission, the good thing with the conditional use permit is that you can put a time period on it. And I would suggest, if you're so inclined to move forward tonight, that a reasonable suggestion was presented tonight. Another condition you may add would be the conditional use permit shall be revoked and become null and void 5 years from the date of town council approval unless an updated conditional use permit application is reviewed and approved by the town prior to the noted 5-year anniversary date. That would allow an opportunity, again, for folks to come back in 5 years and say, is this working? Is it not working? Is it still compatible? Maybe we have some folks that are living in adjacent in Sunrise Estates at that time. At that time, then the commission and ultimately the mayor and council could decide they want to extend the use permit or they want to revoke it. And if they were to extend it, again, they could set a time period for it.
Okay. Next question, number 7. It says the conditional use permit shall be revoked and become null and void if and when the Florence Unified School District and or any other private or public school establishes school facilities as defined by the state statute within 500 feet of a subject medical marijuana dispensary / lease purchase space as defined by the condominium plat. Okay, I got some real confusion here because state law defines school property as any owned property, not as unbuilt, it's owned property. Okay, so my question is, when we look at owned property by the school, and I'm not going to stretch it, I'm not going to talk about track running fields and stuff like that. I'm going to talk about that one small parcel that's just west of the parking lot. Even if we redefine the distance to the condominium plot, we're looking, without counting that parking lot, or let's call it the bonfire field, everybody knows what that is. We're looking at 1,122 feet, even if it's redefined as that small little green spot. We're looking at 1,122 feet. What we need to understand is how far out of that parcel is owned by Florence Unified School District, because I think what we'll find out is it's more than 122 feet, which is going to now put us inside the safe school bubble. It doesn't matter what passes at the next town council meeting. We're dealing with a state law issue here that says safe schools is 1,000 feet. And it's property owned by, not bus stops, not track trails that they've created. Property owned by the school district is 1,000 feet. So my question is, if we remeasured that, where are we? Are we at 998? Are we at 1,000 even? Where are we at?
According to the map, it's 406.
And looking at the map that's there, being a former school board member, the school owns the land north of the football field, east of the canal, all the way to Adamsville Road.
Okay, so that's, from my side, I need redefinition, because right now we're saying the end of the school property is the tip of the football field where the oleanders are. And we know that's not necessarily true. So I think it really, the measurement of the condominium is a moot point right now, because we're still not in compliance with the state law. The state law says safe schools is 1,000 feet. So I think, I don't know where to move on that, because it really doesn't matter what our ordinance says, because state law supersedes any of our ordinances. So, can I, help me out here, Mark?
Well, I agree that the school district owns that property, but there's a question of whether them owning property accessory to their campus is property that's included in their campus. we've been unable to establish whether that is true or not. I'm willing to accept the answer, whatever it may be.
Right.
At this point, I'm not able to, I have not been able to locate a map, and I don't have any concrete answers from the county attorney's office, which provides legal services for the school district, or the school district, or even Arizona Department of Health Services, which is reluctant to provide an answer at this stage of things. They're provided, obviously, when they get an application in front of them, they have to provide a response to that. So,
I'm going to call on John Scher. He's a representative of Florence Unified School. I need you to speak into the microphone, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, as I mentioned before, we're in the process of getting a survey of that land done as we speak, and we should have that within the next 30 days. And I'm the person that the staff asked for the drug-free boundary, and we don't have one. So once that survey is done, what we will be doing in conjunction with the county attorney is to determine where that boundary is so that we can get it registered and get it filed so that it's acceptable to both state law and to whoever needs to approve it. That I'm anticipating within the next 30 to 90 days, we should have that done.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have one more question. It's actually for the applicant again. Actually, it's kind of two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
No, I'll call it one. Number one and number two are the staff recommendations are conditional based upon what ADHS determines. One determines whether you're a facility or not. The other one determines, I'm trying to read it again. If they decide to pull your thing. But then the third one talks about the hospital being operational. I want for the record again, when was the Department of Health Services, I'm looking for the word, they're going to come out and license the hospital? When are they doing that walkthrough?
They're coming to inspect the hospital on September 25th.
September 25th. Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have any further questions from the commission?
I'd like to just hear from the information officer one more. Could you come? Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about, like the nomenclature was kicked around
Sure.
between school campus and school-owned land? Can you?
Sure, and I would just like to clarify as well.
Yeah.
As it reads, it's 3411, again, I1, and I'll put in the punctuation so perhaps you can get the understanding a little better. Quote, drug-free school zone, unquote, means the area within 300 feet of a school and its accompanying grounds, comma, any public property within 1,000 feet of a school and its accompanying grounds, comma, a school bus stop or any school bus or bus contracted to transport pupils to any school. Does that make more sense on 1,000 foot? Okay.
So a bus stop could be school grounds, is what you're saying? Are you saying that?
Correct. As it reads. And by the way, I'm not an attorney either. I'm just reading the statute as is.
Right, I got you. Okay, thank you.
Do I have any further questions?
Chair,
Yes.
members of the commission, I guess I do want to note, because you had some possible hesitation or uncertainty about what you could do with the case tonight, and another consideration, it is still a conditional use permit, so compatibility is critical. And there's hard compatibility of do you meet the minimum criteria of the law, and if it turns out they meet the 500 foot or the 1,000 foot or the 300 foot or whatever it is, okay, that's hard and fast criteria to consider. There's overall compatibility. If you feel the use is compatible, or incompatible, you have the right to make the decision accordingly. So we need to consider that, that specific criteria of the 500 and the 1,000 and everything else that's there. But bottom line, if this is not the right location for this use, the conditional use permit clearly says that carries a lot of weight, and a determination can be made whether you want to approve or not approve the use, or send such recommendation to council. So it does come down to compatibility, and you also have comments that were made by the owner of residential lots and folks that are actually living in homes adjacent to it. So I know you have a lot to consider, and a very challenging decision, I'm sure.
I just, for me, I would kind of like to just see it tabled. I mean, I look at Prop 203, it won 50 to 49%. The people voted for it. I mean, the hospital is coming in. I feel good about all those things, but I've got a state law staring me in the face. So I'd like to, I'd like to have the city attorney come in and talk to us about this. I need some more information, I think.
I think we need real clarification on distances and what's legal property and those kinds of things.
Okay, do I have any further comments or questions? No. With that, I am going to make a motion this evening. My motion is that we table case number PZC. Hold on, I'm looking for my notes. My recommendation is that we table case number PZC 32-13-CUP, which is the conditional use permit for the medical marijuana dispensary on Highway Business Commercial B2 at 450 West Adamsville Road. Do I have a second on that?
Chair, members of
Yes.
the commission, would you care to continue it to a specific date?
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, I had that written down and I forgot to say it. My bad. I was looking at November 7th as the table date.
I would concur with the November 7th date. I believe it provides an opportunity for the applicant, Department of Health, hopefully the county, the school district, the town attorney, everybody, to kind of figure out where these boundaries are. And also, if on October 7th, the ordinance is not passed, it'll become kind of a moot point anyhow. But November, the regularly scheduled meeting on November 7th would be adequate.
Okay, before I re-say my motion here, there's just too many unknowns right now. We don't know if the hospital is going to get approved. We don't know this. We don't know if the actual facility is going to be approved. We don't know if Florence Unified School District land is actually considered land or not. So I think there's a lot of what I would call unfinished business that we kind of need to look at before we really leap forward on this one. So on that, I'm going to make a motion that we table this case number PZC 32-13- conditional use permit until November 7th.
Second that.
I have a motion on the floor to table case number PZC 32-13-CUP. Motion made by Chairman Woolley, seconded by Commissioner Puttrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This case has been tabled to November 7th. Now, if I can I have your agenda? Next agenda item for this evening will be the call to the public for commission response. Call to the public for public comments on the issues within the jurisdiction of Planning and Zoning Commission. Individual commission members may respond to criticism made, may ask staff to review a matter raised, or may ask that the matter be put on a future agenda. At this time, I'm opening the call to the public. Do I have any public that would like to address the commission at this time? With the absence of the public, I will close the call to the public and open the call to the commission. Commissioner Reed?
I have nothing, no.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes, I'd like to ask the staff to put on our next meeting a review of the design review ordinance, 150-013. I think there's been some confusion about what the design review process is, and I'd like to have that reviewed here.
Is that it?
Yes.
Commissioner Petty? Commissioner Patrick?
I have nothing.
I would like the November 7th meeting, if we can schedule an executive session prior to the meeting to afford the commission an opportunity to discuss with the town attorney this particular case. If the code that you're talking about doesn't pass and it becomes a moot point, then you can he doesn't not need to bother coming to the meeting. But I'd like to see an executive session on November 7th.
5:30.
Okay, with that, the call to the commission is completed. We will adjourn this meeting at 7:26. This meeting is now adjourned.